brown coating that's all the way around it. That is your glazing. That is what gives your green beans their flavor. I'm going to taste these and I'm going to tell you if I think they're better. If you have a cookbook, I've been doing some alterations a little bit. If you have a cookbook, I mean, I can make mistakes. And when I made that first cookbook, I was an amateur. I had never made a cookbook. I was new to Facebook. I'd never measured anything that I had ever cooked. And I had to start measuring things and writing it down. So, of course, every once in a while I do find an error. And y'all keep that in mind. I'm not perfect. But let's give this a taste. And my green beans are better than green beans with bacon grease in them and different things like that. If you will just cook them one time and hold off on that other stuff, trust me, you're going to like them. Hey y'all, it's Tammy with Collard Valley Cooks. And we are going to do my greeny green beans tonight. Now, you use canned green beans when you do this recipe, and lately I have just felt like my recipe had too much oil and sugar. So I'm going to edit the recipe. If you've got my recipe book, you can make them the old-fashioned way like that's in there if you're enjoying them. But if you want to reduce the oil and the sugar, you can do that too. When I made this recipe, I did use Del Monte green beans, and I do think the different brands of green beans taste different, and maybe that's why I'm having a harder time, because lately all I've bought is Aldi's green beans. Aldi's green beans are Happy Harvest. But we're going to get started today making these greeny green beans, and I'm going to show you how to do it. You start out with 3 cans of green beans. And 3 cans really do cook down. If you cook green beans like we're used to making them in the South, they're going to cook down, and it may say on the back of the can that it has 3.5 servings, but I'm going to tell you, once these cook down, you're going to be lucky to get 2 servings out of 1 can. That's why I make 3 cans, and there's only 4 of us. So you put in all 3 cans of green beans. I'm making these in a shallower dish for y'all, just so that you can see how they glaze and more about the way that they cook. You always want to leave the juice in there with them. It's got the salt in it. It has nutrients in it. Green beans are packed at their peak of freshness, so don't get rid of those, okay? And it tastes good. But the key is my recipe book actually calls for an 1/8 cup of cooking oil and a tablespoon of sugar. But we're going to reduce that tonight. This is going to be a different one a little bit. And like I said, you can make them however you want to make them. But with this brand of green beans, I found that it's just too sweet. So I'm actually going to use a teaspoon. I'm going to half it. And I'm going to use a teaspoon and a half of sugar. That would be a 1/2 teaspoon per can. And I think that would be a little better myself. You don't want them to taste too sweet. Alright, then we're going to use oil. My recipe calls for an 1/8 cup, which is a lot. I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons. Okay? Which is still plenty. And personally, I really love the flavor of extra light virgin olive oil. I love it in my green beans. I don't know why, it just tastes so good to me. So, in my recipe book, of course, I just say cooking oil, so you can choose whatever you want. Now, you're going to turn these up, and you're going to boil these on high until they reduce all the way down. So, you can stir them a little bit if you want to, and let that sugar and that oil get down in there. But you're just going to let these cook with the top off, because you want the water to evaporate off of them. And so, we're just going to turn them up and start cooking these green beans, and we'll see you in a minute. Okay, now you can see this pot that I put this in to begin with was all nice and clean and silver, but now you see this brown, this brown coating that's all the way around it. That is your glazing. That is what gives your green beans their flavor. That's one reason I use this pan, because normally it would be in a taller pan, and you would take the green beans and you would actually deglaze the side with them when you're mashing them. But you can see that the juice is gone. but we're not finished cooking them. We're going to let them glaze. So you're going to take your spoon and you're going to kind of smash them a little bit. No, just half of them. Don't smash all of them, or they'll be so little, you know, you won't hardly get any servings. Alright? And then you're going to pick it up and kind of move it around, and they're already starting to look like granny green beans. And if you know what I'm talking about, they look more like a green bean that you canned when you cook them this way. Okay? And if you take them to a function, most people are going to think that they are fresh green beans. They're not going to think that they came out of a can, because you could see the beans, little pieces of bean. This one's actually got some strings in it. I don't like the Allen's beans, the flat beans, for that very reason, because they do have more strings. But look, here's a few that have started to glaze on the bottom. And a lot of people are like, that's burning them, but it's really not. And so once they get to about this stage, you're going to let them sizzle for about 5 more minutes, but watch them. You know, don't run, sit down, and let them scorch. And then when we're finished, we're actually going to take some of the bean and deglaze the side of the pan, or you can also use a little bit of water. But I like to take the beans and just kind of rub them up around the edge. And you can see that it comes off when you do that. And if I hadn't used the short pan, all this wouldn't be there. It would be glazed off that goes back down in our beans, okay? So you're going to go all the way around it and kind of deglaze it with your beans. And then if you want to add a little bit more water before you serve them, you can. And that will also deglaze the pot. But this is pretty much our greeny green beans. That's how you do it. Just make sure you get it cooked all the way down. It takes a good 30 minutes to do these green beans. So don't throw them in there and think they're going to be done in 10 minutes, because they're not. Now I'm going to taste these since we reduced the oil and the sugar. They're glazing well though. I was wondering if it would still glaze as well, but you can see by looking around the edges it's doing really good as far as the glazing goes. And the Del Monte, you know, I'm going to taste these and I'm going to tell you if I think they're better. If you have a cookbook, I've been doing some alterations a little bit. If you have a cookbook, I mean, I can make mistakes. And when I made that first cookbook, I was an amateur. I had never made a cookbook. I was new to Facebook. I'd never measured anything that I had ever cooked. And I had to start measuring things and writing it down. So, of course, every once in a while I do find an error. And y'all keep that in mind. I'm not perfect. But let's give this a taste. Perfect to me. Now, I'm going to let Chris taste it. So all these green beans are going to be a little different. Some are going to be saltier than others. Some are not. If the green beans are a little saltier, then the more sugar you put in them, the more it cuts the salt. Just like these taste a lot more salty to me because I did use less sugar tonight to test them out. I'm going to let Chris taste them. They taste really good when you first put them in your mouth, but then after you chew them up and you swallow them, you can tell the difference. So we're going to turn the camera around and let you guys see him taste them. And this is with a little less sugar in it than I normally. That's in my cookbook. I almost need a little more, don't they?
I think they're better with the extra sugar.
Yeah. So it's up to y'all if you're watching the sugar.
I think it makes the glaze
taste better
part. You taste.
Yeah.
You actually taste that more.
Believe it or not, the oil, it takes oil to do that too.
Yeah.
So y'all try them both ways. Try them with a little less sugar if you think they're too sweet, or just try them exactly like the recipe. But make sure whatever you do, you cook them all the way down like this. Make sure that you don't leave them in there too long, and make sure that you cook them all the way down like this, and make sure that you do not have water in the bottom of them and think that they're ready, because they're not. They gotta sizzle just like that sizzle you heard, and they need to sizzle for a good 5 minutes. Okay? Here, let's do this. I'm I'm gonna take a big bite. Thanks for watching Color Valley Cooks, where I show you how to make greeny green beans. And my green beans are better than green beans with bacon grease in them and different things like that. If you will just cook them one time and hold off on that other stuff, trust me, you're gonna like them. Take them to a function. I got green beans in my mouth. Take them to a function and they're gonna love you, and they're gonna go, oh, who made these green beans? How did these come out of the garden? Because they look like it. And you're gonna go, yes, didn't I do such a good job?
Yeah,
Thanks. Thanks for watching Color Valley Cooks, where we cook like Mama did. Bye, y'all. Love ya.